I started investing in real estate about a year ago. It's been a journey about 2 years. There's a ton of work that went and go behind it that I'm sure we're going to talk about.
Can you talk to me a little bit about where you were at that stage when we first started talking, when we first met?
I was kind of in the spot where I decided that real estate was the way I wanted to go. And actually what got me interested in real estate was I stayed at a bed and breakfast.
This is by far the biggest check that you're ever going to sign over at that point in your life. So you're freaking nervous. You almost have no one to talk to about it.
Start looking extra close at everything. You're like, oh, I don't remember that from
Yeah.
Your heart sinks a bit. You're like, you start, again, it's discouraging. You're questioning yourself.
As well as what your most valuable lesson is that you plan on applying to the rest of your deals moving forward.
Buying a house is a lesson. Like, you're not going to get that home run on your first property.
Sure.
Maybe not even get a home run on your first 5 properties, but you need to start somewhere. You just got to start, and you're going to learn along the way, and you just got to be able to roll with it.
Others can do it. I can do it too. There's really not that much difference. Welcome back to this week's, or should I say this month's, or this series of the Close by Mo podcast. Today I'm joined by Colin. Colin has actually invested for the very first time in his multifamily real estate deal. When was this, last year or a year and a half ago?
Yeah, about a year ago, coming up on a year right now.
Cool. Good stuff, man. I'm going to let him introduce himself a little bit before I start going into a couple of the questions that I have prepared. All yours, Colin.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mo, for having me here. Really excited to be on my first podcast ever. As he mentioned, I started investing in real estate about a year ago. It's been a journey about 2 years. There's a ton of work that went and go behind it that I'm sure we're going to talk about. But yeah, and I'm actually starting to share that journey myself. So feel free to follow me at Lattes and Leverage and
Lattes and Leverage.
TikTok, Instagram, all the good stuff.
Definitely do it. So one of the things, Colin, you and I met at one of my meetups over a year ago, I think, right?
Yeah.
So I try to do monthly meetup with New York City with small investors or first time investors and real estate agents, stuff like that. By the way, feel free to look at any of the cameras if you want to. You can look straight at me. Don't worry. And what I realized about your journey is when we first started talking, you had not made the plunge yet into buying something, but when we first started talking, you had mentioned that you had dealt with you had started working with one agent and that you had made a couple of offers and that things weren't panning out. Can you talk to me a little bit about where you were at that stage when we first started talking, when we first met?
Yeah, for sure. So that already feels so long ago, but yeah, I was kind of in the spot where I decided that real estate was the way I wanted to go. And actually what got me interested in real estate was I stayed at a bed and breakfast up in Vermont. We were skiing.
Okay.
And we were just drinking at the bar with these guys. And they were, maybe a few years older than us, and they were having a great time.
Okay.
And we realized that they were the owners of the bed and breakfast. And they were someone that looked just like you and me that was just hanging out drinking at a bar with us. And I was like, oh, so this is something you can do, not just for 40-year-old, 50-year-old people that, came into money, and it's something for all of us. So the big question really came to be, well, how do I get started?
Yep.
Especially living in New York and paying so much for rent.
It's expensive.
I realized, wow, I could be the person people pay rent to and not always be paying rent. And so that led me down this journey, and eventually I went to your meetups. But yeah, so I think when I came there, it was really funny because I wanted to just start touring houses. I had a goal. It was like,
okay,
just get out there, just start seeing things. They call it different things, but
sure.
Putting feet on pavement.
Exactly.
And just
it's a numbers game. Yeah, just go and just start doing something. Whatever is the easiest thing to do. Hey, I'm just gonna go start looking at stuff. But keep going.
Exactly. Yeah. And was it Zillow or whatever? It said, click to tour a house.
Okay.
And it was this workflow where it sent me straight to this Zillow sponsored agent. And all of a sudden I had, a real estate agent.
Yeah.
Didn't know anything about them. I didn't pick this real estate agent. And to be honest, they were super nice, but they weren't who I was looking for.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So, in my first week of real estate investing or, even searching, I had to break up with my agent.
Oh, geez. Okay.
And that's always kind of funny, having those professional breakups, breaking up with your therapist, breaking up with an agent.
Yeah.
It's a good practice to do. And yeah, but then I found the agent who I'm working with now.
Got it.
It's great, and I highly recommend leaning on your network for that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Finding someone that's recommended or you've heard good things about.
Well, you know what? Let's lean into that a little bit more, because I feel like this is something that people don't realize until they start to do it, until they start to notice the differences. And I'll always, you'll hear me talk about this in my meetups and my videos and all that fun stuff. That is, you want to work with someone that gets you, and maybe even more so that has done what you're trying to accomplish, especially if you're a first-time investor or you're buying something for the very first time, because you want someone that will be able to empathize with where you're at in the process, but also understand what you're looking for. There's a key, there's a big difference between working with an agent in Brooklyn that does multi-million-dollar transactions for people that are, buying their owner-occupied properties versus someone in New York City, maybe in your shoes, that was like, hey, I want to buy something that I can live in, but my priority is to get cash flow and to get income from it. Can you talk to me a little bit about how different that experience was with the agent that you ended up working with versus the first agent? And I'm sure they're both great agents in their own regards, but what was, like, I would say that the top two differentiators that made you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to keep working with this person.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think what I knew I was really looking for in a real estate agent is, and it's similar when you have different professionals too, like
Sure.
accountants and
Yeah.
insurance people, is they're like, sure, I can sell you a house, sure, I
Yeah.
can, do your taxes, but I want someone who is familiar with the game that I'm trying to play, and
Yeah. Yep.
small multifamily homes.
Hmm.
And so this first agent I worked with, she was, trying to establish herself, and I'm sure she was a real go-getter, but she'd never sold a multifamily home in her life.
Got it. Gotcha.
Whereas this other agent that I started working with, he's great. His name's Darren. He's been selling multifamily homes for longer than I've been alive.
Wow.
So
Okay.
there's that difference in experience
Yep.
and understanding the area and,
Yep.
and whatnot. And I think what really shone through with that, and not just being more familiar with the market in
Mhm.
general, is he was completely connected with everyone. Like he was my lifeline to finding my first contractor, my lifeline to finding,
Gotcha.
my banker for finding, my insurance. Like
Yeah.
he connected me with everyone. So the value of having a real estate agent isn't just finding a house, but
Yeah.
connecting with all these other accessory type
The people
industries.
in your team. I completely agree with that. And it's, as someone that is both an investor and a broker now, it's something that I feel like there's a value that a lot of agents aren't able to communicate, and that is, hey, your network is really important, especially when you're working with someone that may never have done this before. Which leads me actually to the first official question, which is, can you tell me a little bit about like your background? And I know you mentioned, hey, the spark to start investing or looking into real estate was the bed and breakfast. But a lot of times people that are maybe coming from a family that, maybe that doesn't really have any homeowners, or they're just homeowners for the sake of homeowners, not really, house hackers, stuff like that. Talk to me a little bit about what your background is, what your family's, investments, whatever you can talk about, of course, and how that maybe helped you or didn't help you to get into your first deal.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I didn't, come from a background that was, super wealthy or anything. I came from a smaller town in Montana, and we'd fine. Both my parents are accountants; they're professionals. We didn't have large amounts of family wealth or
Got it.
this like kind of innate like investment experience or
Mhm.
money management. Like we owned a house ever since I was born, but we were a little bit house poor in the sense
Got
that
it.
like houses weren't an asset, houses were a liability, and
I
it's
see.
generally your largest liability. And so that was kind of a big mental shift for me
Mm.
is getting away from that, like, American dream of, like, getting a wife and kids and
Yeah.
buying a house and half your paycheck going towards that house, and you're only ever gonna be able to afford 1 house because I mean, already half your
Yeah,
paycheck going
exactly.
to that. And really, I kind of fell into, like, that kind of, like, there's gotta be a better way. And led me down the path of, going on Bigger Pockets blogs and reading a lot
Gotcha.
of those linked books
Yeah, yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. But really, the differentiating factor is treating real estate and homeownership as an asset and not a liability. How
Gotcha.
can this thing that I own make me money and not just sit there and waste my money?
Got it. And it's I think what you've mentioned is really profound for a couple of different reasons. Number one, I think what you've brought up is the fact that you are viewing this as like a tool to help you generate more wealth versus the former, which is like, well, hey, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm just going to buy my house. It is better than renting for sure, especially if you know you're going to be setting down your roots. But there's a difference between looking at something as a way to like access more capital versus just looking at it as like, hey, I'm just storing my sort of wealth here and that's it. And it's just like another bank account. And when I need to, hopefully I can make it liquid and the market is strong enough for me to be able to get the funds out if I need to. Can you give me or give the viewers, the listeners, everyone, a little bit of background about your journey into getting your first house hack? Because I know you mentioned you had looked in New York City, but you had sort of been priced out from it. Can you talk a little bit about that and talk more about, or if you can also highlight a little bit more about maybe if there was any parts of the process that were just scary, right? Because, your parents were homeowners, great, but maybe you've never been exposed to someone or anyone that's sort of done what you were trying to do. And that is really scary. Like, even if it's like your first, like, I'm sure now you're like, oh, okay, I'm ready for my next one, whatever it is. But in the moment, it's like, this is like the biggest transaction you're ever doing, right? And I think a lot of people get cold feet from that, which I totally understand. But can you talk about your journey from that perspective and what you were scared about that could have gone wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. If I had to describe the experience or how I felt, probably the most common emotion along that way is it's discouraging.
Yeah.
It's downright discouraging. It's probably discouraging in every market, but especially being in such a high cost market like New York City. The average home is probably hovering around $1 million,
Yep. Yeah.
and so you experience a lot of imposter syndrome as you go there, and you're like, oh, can I really afford this? Even with like doing a 3.5 or
Yep.
5% down type loan, the closing costs add up. It's like
Yeah.
5% of the million dollar home, but then $20,000 of closing costs, and so you got to pay for the insurance up front. And all of a sudden, you spend $100,000 when you were thinking, oh, 50,000.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And here's the thing: is it you're trying to find like a deal,
Yeah.
and so is everyone else.
Yep.
So
100%.
so it's really hard for you to like I remember my first time that I found like a really good deal. I think I actually sent it to you, and I was really excited about this house. Like it's gonna cash flow off
Yeah,
of
yeah.
that. And then when I showed up to the open house the next day, there was a line out the door in a red block because everyone else saw that same posting and everyone else knew it was a good
Yep,
deal.
yep.
So that's something I'm still kind of working on here is how can you get that wedge between like other people's like knowledge and your knowledge to
Mhm.
basically make this like better investment or in that kind of like intelligent investment based on maybe off market type stuff, or
Sure.
maybe you just acted quicker.
Yeah.
But especially in my experience of just acquiring this first house,
Mhm.
we I think I sent out like 40
Offers?
offers, yeah.
Man.
And
Was it like 40 different properties, or was it just like offer, counter
no, no, like 40 different properties.
oh my god.
It was really hard because, you get on it right away,
Yeah.
and but it was just straight to best and final
I
every
was
single
gonna
time,
yeah.
and people were offering just prices that I couldn't,
Yep.
and that's because, well, 1, interest rates are so high right now, and 2, I'm putting so little down.
Mhm.
The cost of capital, I'm extra sensitive to the cost of capital.
Yeah, 100%.
So, more of like a, uh, institutional investor, maybe
Sure.
like BlackRock or just someone
Sure.
that has a lot more money and can put 50% down,
Yeah.
can pay over market and can pay a little bit substantially over market, to get the deal because it's
Mhm.
not gonna cost them in the loan price.
No, I completely agree, and one thing I see as a broker too, just to add on to your point is, you know, I work with people all across the spectrum, right? It's like low down payment and then people that are buying it all cash too. And in most cases, people aren't really using all their cash, buying it, and then just sort of leaving it there. Most of the time, they'll do delayed financing. So they'll like start the financing process, they'll buy it in cash, and then they'll pull the money out, they'll get the loan. But that's like the advantage that people that have been doing it for so long have is that they have all these cash or they have like a war chest, right? Can you talk a little bit more than about the specific deal itself, the multifamily thing? Obviously, you don't have to give your address or your location or anything, but talk to me about like the tenants, talk to me about the deal, the underwriting, and if you could also segue into the challenges that you faced with that deal too, because I know there's some horror stories there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna kinda start from the top, but, make sure to direct me in the right direction just
Sure,
for
sure. No, keep going, keep going. No, no, this is great. This is great.
ultimately, I found a house that, I didn't get booted out the door in best and final, and it wasn't, my top pick out of all the
Got
investment
it. Got it.
properties. And then, in a little bit, I didn't even have the best feeling about it.
Mm,
But I kind of somewhere halfway down that journey of applying to houses realized I'm probably not gonna get the best deal on my first go.
yeah.
I just need to get an okay deal,
Yeah.
and I just need to get it under my belt so I can
Yeah.
move on to that second and third deal,
Absolutely.
get
Absolutely.
that experience and start to, build up that war chest to be able to bully the other people
Yeah.
a little bit.
Sure.
But I was the minnow here, just
Yeah.
trying to, get whatever was left.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was fine, but there were some red flags within the sellers were super non-communicative,
Mm,
and they it almost seemed like they were, like, incompetent, but, like, reflecting on it, I think that was, like, weaponized incompetence to kinda
mm,
get what they want done. Uh, but yeah, so, we went back and forth on this and that and finally got to, like, the lawyer review or whatever.
okay. Yeah.
And then really the only thing I had asked in lawyer review is, like, "Can I have the rent rolls? I need to see the leases to
Yeah.
confirm that what you say is."
Is matching up with what we have on paper. Absolutely. Which is, by the way, a completely normal thing to ask,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and they delayed and delayed and delayed, and we said, "Well, I need to close on this house soon." Like, I was living at my mom's house in Montana as part of the way that I saved up for this house and just going crazy living at home, and I'm like, "Okay, we'll move forward, but, like, make it clear that they need to get us those leases as soon as possible." Every time we asked about it, it was, "Oh, she's looking for them, she can't find
Got
them."
it. And this is while you're in underwriting with the bank? Or is this during the lawyer review process still?
This we closed out the lawyer review process. We
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
that's fine. So,
Okay, that's
but
fine. It was
say with the expectation that you'll get us these leases,
gotcha, gotcha.
and they kept delaying and delaying and delaying. and we'll get into some of the underwriting stuff, but I'll just kind of close out that topic. Is they didn't actually end up giving us the leases until 3 days before the first closing date.
Damn.
And when those leases came, they were $500 short of the rent roll that they listed.
That they had showed. Okay.
And so I responded, to my lawyer and was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
The material
Misrepresentation. Yeah.
and they said, oh, well, you said you were going to increase rents when you moved in. So, whatever.
Wow. Okay.
So they don't
care. Yeah.
they're not connecting business in good faith.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
just for a lot.
Dude, that's brutal, man. That's brutal. Talk to me about what that sort of felt like, because obviously, so just so people understand, I went through this not the exact same process with maybe not so great sellers, but when you're buying like your very first property, let alone a home to live in, but like an investment property, this is by far the biggest check that you're ever going to sign over at that point in your life. So you're freaking nervous. You almost have no one to talk to about it, because it's not like your buddies are going out and like scooping up and buying up properties or anything. Especially not if your friends are in the city. Most folks are transplants. They're sort of transitory. They're just renting. So you have no one to talk to. And 3 days before closing, after you've gone through the underwriting process with the bank, basically auditing your financials, they're like, hey, that thing that we told you, this is not correct. My world would explode if I was in your shoes.
Yeah, it was super frustrating, and we ended up delaying close for about a week, just to talk with my lawyer,
Sure.
see what to do about it. But here's the thing: is they'd actually already delayed that close date a couple times.
My God.
And I was reaching actually the wall, which was my rate lock,
the rate lock, and the commitment, and then your closer down.
And I locked in at a 6.6, which was pretty good for the
time. Yeah.
Yes. And I was going to look at more of a 7.5 if I had as its rate lock. So it was like, sure, $500, but I'm going to pay $500 a month in interest
for a very long time.
Rate lock.
Yeah.
For a very long time on the lock in at 7 foot.
Gotcha.
So that's just one of those things I had to give up on.
Okay.
But yeah, also coming up on close, another thing that they, I figured, they said they'd take care of, and they didn't, was, the kind of closing conditions, or what do you call it when you do the appraisal and you say, fix this, fix that.
Oh, like contingencies, or like post-closing, or like, I'm the exact term is escaping me right now, but I know what you mean. And so it's like the bank did the appraisal and said, hey, X, Y, and Z needs to be cleaned out before closing, or cleared out. It's like this list of open items needs to be closed out.
Yeah, something like that. So, but basically led by us, where like, we reviewed the appraisal and we said, we can live with a lot of this stuff, but I need you to fix this. I need you to fix this. I need you to fix this.
Oh, like the appraisal or the inspection, I guess. I mean, by the way,
inspection.
Inspection. Okay, just so people are aware too, Colin's property is out in Jersey. So the process is similar, but there's some key differentiating factors there that I'm not 100% familiar with. So if you see me sort of stumbling around, it's because I'm trying to figure out what the New York City version of it is. But keep going.
Yeah. So whatever you call those, and like we inspected and we wanted certain things fixed.
Yeah.
And then we also had already settled on something like $7,000 or $8,000 of just, I'm gonna have to fix this stuff up myself.
Got it. Okay.
But
of credits that they were going to give you, basically.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
So they gave me $8,000 in credit, but they were also supposed to fix this.
Oh, I see.
And like the day before close, the second close, the absolute final close before I lose my rate lock, I said, okay, great. Yeah. Can you just like forward pictures of all the, proof that you fixed these things that we agreed upon? And the lawyer responds and goes, well, I can't do that. We didn't fix them.
Their lawyer responded to that?
Well, he didn't admit to not fixing them, but he said, I can't procure these photos because they didn't do anything. They can do anything they agreed to. And this is my first time doing my big business deal.
Yeah.
You can just say these things and get.
Yeah.
And so, they said, okay, well, you can delay close again if you want us to fix that.
Yeah.
And they knew they'd already
They were playing a game of chicken. Yeah, they were sort of dragging it out, which is, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. It's very, obviously, it's unhelpful. It's very unfortunate too. I guess the silver lining here, and we'll get to like how the actual nitty gritty of the deal is playing out here in terms of the tenants, because I know you have some stories to share. I think the silver lining here is, well, now you know, like what to expect, for your next deal and so on and so forth. So it's like, all right, fine. You could cut a little bit up front, but hey, it's not going to happen again,
Yep, exactly.
So talk to me a little bit about, okay, you close with all the grievances. Sure. You were in a tough spot, back on the wall, fine. But you're like, you know what? You think you can still make this work. So talk to me about the tenants in the place too, as well as like how many units, stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. So this property was almost $1 million, something like $900,000 for a 3-family home in Union City. And for those who don't know, Union City's right above Hoboken. It's really similar. There's a popular neighborhood a little bit south called the Heights. and it's basically the Heights, but just across city lines.
Okay.
And it's pretty crazy because as soon as you cross the city lines into Union City, prices drop about 20%.
Oh, wow.
And the reason prices drop about 20% is rent control is incredibly strict inside Union City.
Oh, okay.
So if you cross, literally south across the street, the same exact home, 20% more expensive
20%.
because uh, in the Heights, everything 4 units and less, no rent control.
Mm.
In Union City, anything 2 units and more, rent control.
Rent control. Wow. Okay.
Except 3-family homes, which I bought,
Mm.
that are owner occupied,
Got it. Which it is.
which it is now.
Yeah. Okay.
That bureaucratic process with Union City to break rent control
Mm.
took 6 months.
I'm not surprised.
It was ridiculous.
I'm not surprised at all. Keep going. Talk to me about that.
But yeah, so it's a 3-family home, nice old brick building built in 1907.
Okay.
Which, having a house built over 100 years ago comes with its own problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have this piece of land, I have this piece of house that's mine.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Okay.
And yeah, kind of the first thing that you get is like, oh, you get like 2 months of reprieve with the
Yeah.
mortgage.
Yeah.
I know that like, wow, like that's a really large payment coming every month for the next however long I can ever picture it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you kind of get on business quick, and again, it's not really like, it's not like there's like an instruction booklet of what to do and like
Sure.
someone really good to talk to about this.
Yep.
You're like, well, what do I do? And you're like, how do those tenants even pay me money?
Yep.
And where do I put that money?
Yeah.
And like, and another thing that happened at close is I realized the next day, I'm like, wait, I don't have any keys.
Oh, what?
The lawyer didn't even give me keys at closing.
So you just walked away from the closing? You're like, all right, I'm good. It's my house now.
Yeah. Because I mean, I'm working with people who've done this a million times.
Sure.
I was just doing what everyone else was.
Wait, so where'd you get the keys from then? Who had them?
So I had my lawyer call their lawyer, and he was like, what the fuck? I'm golfing.
Yeah, yeah.
Stop golfing. You didn't
Give us the key.
complete your part of close.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I don't know where the keys are.
What the hell kind of lawyer is this?
He's my least favorite lawyer.
Okay.
And I don't remember. I think they mailed them to me. And so I didn't even get the keys until something like 10 days after I closed.
Okay. I just don't understand. So let's say on a Monday you close, the property is yours and you don't have access. You don't have any keys, nothing. So this whole time, like you haven't even stopped by the house or anything, or have you like driven by on the
I
outside?
didn't even stop by because I can't.
You can't do anything. All right. So, okay. So 10 days later, oh my God, this is giving me like a heart murmur. Cause I'm just, okay. So you finally get the keys. Talk to me about like, what does that moment look like? Were the tenants surprised to see you? But they've seen you before. They sort of knew about the sale and everything, right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's talk about what the keys looked like.
Yeah.
It was like this giant, like key ring, and there was probably 50 keys on it, and not one of them was a label. And so I walk up to my property.
It's like a dungeon or dungeon keys.
And like most of them don't work, but I'm sitting there at the front door trying like one of 50 keys to get in. And so I think one of the tenants does come out, and she's been with the property for a longer time. And she was very sweet. And like, he kind of like brought me in. She's like, okay, like,
here's what you do.
And yeah, it is a little bit of this weird moment with your tenants. Cause I'm like this like young 26-year-old guy. And they're like half of them wants to like take care of me. And half of them is like, why the heck am I paying money for you? Like, who are you phoning in here?
100%.
So it is a weird thing, but yeah, and there's just a lot of like, don't really get to know your tenants well, but just like kind of like logistics stuff of like, okay, well, send rent to here, and by the way, I highly recommend using rent software. Don't be like collecting checks and stuff.
Absolutely.
I use Landlord Studio. It's fantastic. It's free if you have 3 units or less.
Oh, good for you.
And all of it handles ACH payments and all that kind of rent reminders of automatically like tax on additional rent for late payments, which thankfully that I've never had someone pay late. But yeah, it handles all that for you, and
good for you.
It's coming up on my first year of taxes. It's making everything a lot easier.
Oh yeah, they're giving you the forms and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And for anyone else that's curious, I mean, I know you. What was the name of the thing you use?
Landlord Studio.
Landlord Studio. I don't know about my one. I used to use Cozy, and they were free up to 20 units, and then they got bought out by CoStar, which is like this behemoth, right?
Yeah.
But now it's apartments.com. It's like a management tool to apartments. Like I still don't pay anything. I don't know why. I think I only have like 3 or 4 units. But maybe that's why. But keep going. All right. So you've got this like big ring of keys, dude. I'm sure that the scene was like hilarious. Like it's just like a kid outside, like, oh, this is my building now, and where's my money? Why am I not a rich landlord yet?
Yeah. No, it was definitely a bit ridiculous, and I think like you said earlier, like I just spent more money than I've ever spent.
Yeah, I feel.
I'm looking at this mountain of debt, and then you like start looking extra close at everything. You're like, oh, I don't remember that from.
Yeah.
Your heart sinks a bit. You're like, you start again. It's discouraging. You're questioning yourself, and
Absolutely.
there was a lot to get through to from then to now, and even now we're not out of the weeds, but in a
Yeah,
much better spot. But there's
that's good.
plenty of trials and tribulations, and that was just the start.
Well, hey man, look, I'm first of all, I'm really happy for you. I feel like this is something that is understated often, especially like in the city that we're in. We, I think for me, I'm as a broker, I get to deal with more like owners and buyers and sellers, people that are actively at that. But I remember like being in your shoes too, and it's like it's very difficult because you don't know sort of know like where to find your tribe a little bit, right? Especially like at the age that you're at, you're making good money and you buy your first property. It's a very scary thing, and I distinctly remember that as well. Like once we had closed and I had like gone and checked out one of my properties, I was like, "What the hell is this? Like, where is this?" And like, what do I do? Like, oh, they shut off the gas. Like, I didn't even know I was supposed to call the utility company, you know? And I'm like, oh my god, what's happening? And there's just so much anxiety around that. And there were two things that sort of helped me, and maybe you've already passed this threshold. So whoever's listening, maybe you'll get some benefit from it. But it was sort of asking myself, like, okay, well, I'm thinking about all these things about what could go wrong, but hey, what if everything just goes right? Right? What if everything just goes right? What does that scenario look like if everything goes right? And the second thing, which I really deeply believe is a very American spirited thing, which is, hey, if others can do it, I can do it too. There's really not that much difference. There's people that are really not as smart as you, that are doing quite well off in real estate and everything else. If they can do it, there's absolutely nothing different about you that you can do the same, if not better. And those are the things that sort of help me just keep trudging forward, especially in the face of like, what the hell am I doing? You know? Can you talk a little bit about, and we'll get to like your lessons learned from this. Talk to me about your first month of ownership. What were the challenges you ran into? Because I remember there was a couple of things that you had brought up in one of our last meetups.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing that I just really remember when I first opened up the house and it's mine is it's quiet. Also,
Yeah.
all those people that were working with you and collaborating with you and wanted a piece of clothes,
Yeah.
they're gone now.
Yeah.
Poof. So now, I bothered my real estate agent for probably longer than I should have for certain this and that. But yeah, that's where you're really kind of on your own, where they held your hand a bit through closing.
Yep.
And you got a lot of figuring out to do. Thank God for like Chat GPT and stuff to be like, oh well, like what things should I be considering? And
Sure.
I did a lot of like figuring out what kind of maintenance and regular maintenance I should be doing and what
Okay.
things to check on. I actually had to spend a lot of time in the housing works office, or it's not rent control, it's Section 8, like
The housing authority,
housing.
the local office that administers the Section 8 payments.
Exactly.
It's such a story to tell you about that maybe afterwards, but keep going.
Yeah, yeah. So one of my tenants that I acquired was she was Section 8, and so I had to go and like figure out how to like get Section 8 to send me their checks and stuff too, which was none of it. There's no easy button.
There's no easy button.
And that I think soon after that, you kind of figure all that stuff out, and that was like the normal expected challenge.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of my first like major like moment where I'm like, maybe this won't work out.
Uh-huh.
I can't remember if it was in the first month, the first few months. I got hit with two pretty big bills,
No way.
right back to back, and those bills amounted to about $45,000 on
Damn.
my third month of ownership.
What's this for? 45,000 right out of the blue? Was it like penalties, fines, anything, repairs? What is it?
No, it was well, yeah, repairs. Two things that I needed to do. One was that as I like the basement front area was filled with trash, filled like, and I spent like weeks like pulling all this trash out every trash day and stuff. So I know as much as like the trash authority would take
Okay,
it.
yeah, yeah.
And found a whole lot of water damage.
Oh,
It's just pretty apparent that there was a flood sometime in the last 5 years that was not properly remediated. And now that's where we got back into a little bit of talking with the sellers, because we viewed this as a material non-disclosure. You thought, no way they didn't know about this.
yeah, yeah.
No way they didn't know that they can clean this up properly.
Sure.
But unfortunately, the way New Jersey works is it's a real buy as is type state.
Oh, okay.
And like the only way to get any sort of like remediation from that from the sellers would be for them to like have like some like smoking gun email, like, we know we're screwing over this, buyer.
Got it.
The likelihood of that being in writing,
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
and the legal fees I'd have to pay to even get to there,
Hmm.
it's just something you had to swallow. And so that the
Damn.
water damage was, something like $15,000.
Mm-hmm.
And they came and they like, ripped up a bunch of my walls and sprayed, and then they left.
Mm.
Um, and I was like, wait, my walls are broken. They're like, oh, well, we don't fix your walls.
Yeah, we don't put the walls back together.
We just
That's
take the
one
walls
of
down.
yeah, yeah.
And like, this was like my foray into, homeownership too, is while they're actually ripping the walls out. And I'm just like completely reactionary at this point.
Sure.
One thing after another, just doing what it's supposed to do to get this house
Yeah.
livable. I get a call from the housing control inspector,
Okay.
the city union city
Sure.
inspector to make sure you're not doing like unregulated work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he's claiming that I needed a permit for this. And apparently my neighbors who I have a huge beef with my next door neighbor.
Oh my
We
God.
can get into that later if we want to, but they've made my life a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
As recently as they reported me for not shoveling my driveway quick enough, and now I have to go to court.
Oh my
Like,
God.
I have a court summons in New Jersey v. Colin Mills. It's so dramatic, so ridiculous for snow. And what really pisses me off is I tried to extend an olive branch so that the time before that, when it snowed, I shoveled their front area.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the very next time I didn't get to shoveling mine quick enough, instead of, I don't know, returning the favor and
Yeah,
shoveling
yeah.
mine, they walked down to City Hall and reported me.
Wow, dude, that's brutal, man. That's the thing with like neighbors is like you never know what you're gonna get because they, it's not like you go out when you're going looking at buildings or doing an inspection. They'll be like, yeah, that neighbor's a douche or that neighbor's just gonna report you for stuff. I'm so sorry you have to deal with that because it's like, well, technically they're allowed to do that, but then it's also like, hey, man, like this is your neighbor, just go be nice to them. Just out of curiosity, did anything happen? Like, was there like any kind of animosity? Was there like a catalyst or anything?
So they're this like older Russian family. They've lived there something like 60 years. So they already dislike me because I'm representing new and change.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is not how their city used to be.
Sure.
But yeah, other than like when they called the inspector on me in the beginning, for
Sure.
like whatever, um, maybe fast forward 4 or 5 months from there, I'm doing some remodels and I'm building out a laundry room, and I need to vent my
Sure.
laundry room.
Yeah.
I need to drill through this brick to add a vent
Yeah, yeah.
for my exhaust for my dryer. The only feasible location for that is my wall, but on the side of their alley.
Oh, okay.
And I reached out to the inhabitant, like, it was the only contact number I had, and was like, "Hey, like, this wasn't really asking for permission, but it's more of like a heads up. I have
Yeah.
permission to work on this wall and install, a small 3-inch vent behind your trash cans. You're hardly gonna notice that.
Yeah, yeah.
So just wanted to let you know, and if there was a better time for me to, fix it, like,
Yeah, yeah.
I'll respect, because it's
Sure.
your alleyway." And they responded and said, "Sorry, I can't give you permission to do that."
It's not there to give permission. It's your building.
Right, and I said, I really, respect your opinion here, but I just wanna make clear that I wasn't asking for permission. I was just trying to find a coordinated time with you that was best for me to perform this work."
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and they were like, "Nope, I don't give you permission. Do not come onto my property." I'm like, "Well, there is an implied easement. I'm allowed to come onto your property
Yeah.
or onto this alleyway to work on my building." That's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
how zero lot
Yeah,
lines work.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So I just went ahead and did it. I was like, "Well, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm sorry that you don't."
Yeah, yes.
And she yelled at me to get off her property, right as luckily, she didn't come out until I finished up.
Sure.
"Well, I'm done."
Yeah, yeah.
And I had, like, some rubble from, like,
Sure.
the brick and concrete I
Yeah.
built through. I'm like, "Do you mind if I, clean up?" She's like, "Just get off my property." So you didn't even let me clean up the brick and stuff that
Yeah.
was in her alleyway. It's like, "Okay."
Wow, what a mess. What a
So
mess.
ever since then, they've just been out to get me.
Wow.
And in fact, about 2 months after, there wasn't a big problem with the vent
Mm,
until it got cold.
mm.
But now when it's below freezing, the vent
The smoke.
has visible
Yeah,
steam.
you see steam, sorry, yes.
And so I was showering and I was running my dryer and it was cold out, and while I'm in the shower, I hear my front door open. And I'm, like, naked, I'm getting out of the shower, put a towel on, and it's my neighbor standing in my entryway. And it's this old Russian man, and he's like, "I need to talk to you." I'm like, "First of all, get the fuck out of my house.
Yeah, yeah.
Second of all, let me get dressed and I'll talk to you up front."
Yeah, yeah.
And he was complaining. He's like, "Oh, it's toxic and it's upsetting and giving my wife migraines and stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, like, I'll explore the other options. Like, I don't wanna be like a thorn in your side. Just
Yeah.
see what I can do, and I'll get back to you. But, like, just so you know, like, the steam is non-toxic.
Yeah, yeah.
It's water evaporation.
Yeah, and you're not doing anything illegal. I'm so sorry, like,
It's completely within regulation, and it's also completely standard. This is a super
Yeah.
regular thing in New York and in New Jersey, and obviously houses are close together. It's not like an offensive cooking water vent.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
smells like clean laundry.
Yeah.
And so, leave it like that, and then, not 1 hour later, I'm, like, working, and I'm, like, on a meeting, and I got, like, rack, 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 rack at my front door because this time I made sure to lock it,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's his wife. It's, like, this crazy old woman who's, like, yelling at me. She's like, "You can't do this. Like, if we did this on our other side, like, they yell at us." And I was like, "Well, you could do it on your other side.
Yeah,
They may yell at you, but you were allowed to do it."
yeah, yeah.
And eventually, I was just fed up, and I said, "You know what? I don't have to move this. I'm complete with my right to have it there.
Yeah, exactly.
Have a good day."
100%, dude. I feel like, and I think maybe you're finally at that point now where you realize you just gotta have by default you gotta have like an asshole dick kind of like sort of not personality but just sort of like a very stoic, emotionless sort of approach to these things. Like even when I'm working with my tenants or if I have like any neighbors, stuff like that, I just go like, well, is this illegal? No. Okay, go away now. Like it is not like this. Mind your own business. That's all it is, you know?
Yeah, and you wanted to come in and be like the good
Friendly, yeah.
"Aw, shucks,"
Yeah.
but that very quickly gets stripped away
Yeah.
by I don't know if that's inherent to real estate investing or real estate investing in the tri-state area,
Uh-huh.
but you learn to grow a bit of a shell really quickly.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like it's important to do that. And again, we can talk about like East Coast, West Coast, stuff like that. But I feel like, especially as a growing landlord, my default now is no emotions. My default now is I'm not here to be your friend anymore because I don't want to do this because I people are gonna just frankly just bitch and complain. I really have nothing else to say. Like my first property, very similar. I closed on it. I'm just going and saying hi to the neighbors because I thought, hey, this is a nice thing to do. For the lady on the left side is going like, "The siding needs to be replaced, all of it." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks a lot, Gracie. I'll get back to you, whatever it is." And I like, at that moment, I was like, "Oh, man, these people are crazy, bro." Because they have and I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but I feel like folks that really, maybe they're retired or whatever it is, whether they're really wealthy or they just have a lot of free time, they just have a lot of free time. Like, they have the time to go down to City Hall, file and write a complaint and say, "Oh, X, Y, and Z things are happening." Is it illegal for them to do so? Absolutely not. They can do that. Uh, but given the opportunity, people will try and do that. Right.
Yeah, no, totally. I think like one of my biggest mistakes with these neighbors is when I moved in, they went, "Oh, are you the owner?" And I was proud. I was like, "Yep, I sure am."
Yeah, yeah.
I should have said, "No, no, I'm just the property manager." Because the owner had never been around before, and probably some of your property, they never had anyone to complain to.
Yes, yes.
So now they know that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they had a whole laundry list of like, "Oh, well, you need to clean out your gutters, you need to fix this, you need to fix this."
Yeah, yeah.
Like, get, send a letter or something. Yeah.
No, 100%. I think it's great that, well, not great that you had to experience that, but also great because at least now you know, right? Like, hey, this is how it works. And I think I have an unfair advantage because I deal with a lot of this on secondhand. So as a broker, I get to see the very best and the very worst of things. I get to see the very best of tenants that take care of properties, and most of them do. I get to see the very worst where clients are not being able to make ends meet, and they're talking to me about selling their building for a discounted value because the tenants are abusing the court system, the housing court system, and not paying rent for a long time. Can you talk to me about then, as we're like entering the final chapter of the podcast, talk to me about what your biggest regret is with this, as well as what your most valuable lesson is that you plan on applying to the rest of your deals moving forward.
Yeah, I think,
Biggest regret.
my biggest regret off the bat would just be general due diligence
Mm.
up front. I kind of was exhausted by the house search process and
Mm.
wanted to overlook some things just to make it happen.
Mm.
I still think like, I'm going to make money off this property,
Mhm.
but maybe if this was my fourth house, I wouldn't have gone through with it. I would have walked away.
Mm.
So I think part of that is really, and there's a lot of learning in just owning a house on like what things are and how
Yeah.
it stays up. But like the appraisal or the inspection was like kind of like reading Chinese to me when I first got it. Like there was a lot of stuff where I'm like couldn't tell how bad it was.
Mm.
So I probably would have gotten a little bit more review on the inspection report and probably would have calculated how much those costs would have been a little bit more and maybe asked a little bit more in terms of contingencies, and then been more willing to walk away if I couldn't get met on that.
100%. Okay. So that would be your biggest regret. What about the most important lesson you've learned through this process that you plan on applying through to your future deals?
Yeah, I think just the most important lesson, like for me, I think maybe two. One is
Mm.
just in itself, buying a house is a lesson. Like
Mm.
you're not going to get that home run on your first property.
Sure.
Maybe not even get a home run on your first 5 properties,
Mhm.
but you need to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And like I read a whole bunch of books about how to own a home and how to take care of a home, but there's nothing like owning the home and actually being there.
Absolutely.
So like instead of being stuck in that analysis paralysis forever and being worried if you're going to make it or not, you just got to start,
Mhm.
and you're going to learn along the way, and you just got to be able to roll with it. So I think like that's my first one. Is like takeaway is to like needed to start somewhere. It wasn't my best deal. And like the knowledge I've gained just from owning it is invaluable.
100%.
And then I think for two is just like really leaning on the right team, having the right like network and
Mhm.
connections and everything. having the right agent, having the right insurance guy, having the right banker just makes your life a lot better. And especially if you're a young real estate investor who's trying to scale, you're going to need them hopefully more and more frequently, because ideally growth is not linear, it's exponential. So, maybe I buy one house and 2 years later I buy another house, but maybe it's 18 months the next time, and 12 months, and maybe now I'm buying two houses later.
100%.
So that team's going to become more and more important, and they're going to set you up to scale too. Maybe you can go out and like get a few quotes for insurance your first time, and get your own deal through Progressive. But like, are you going to have like, on your fifth house you're going to have a Progressive one and a State Farm one and a whatever one, and you're managing all that yourself? Or do you wish you just had gone through the insurance guy, the broker in the beginning, and he manages all your policies for you? You don't even need to care where they're at.
Yeah, it's a lot of, I think, delegation that you have to start to get comfortable with. But, one thing I would say, and like, maybe you have realized this, maybe you haven't, but at least maybe for me, this is my takeaway, is that you going through all those like little nightmare scenarios or moments of nightmare, I think that actually adds so much value to future Colin, in the sense that future Colin is now just going into something and looking at it, and what would have taken like 3 months for past Colin to do is now taking like less than 30 minutes for future Colin to do, because you've lived through that experience. And you walk in, you're like, hey, what's all this stuff doing in the basement against this wall? I don't care that they're saying they're moving. No, I want to see what's going on behind that wall. I want to see if there's water damage, right? And I think there's a certain amount of value to that, right? And it sucks that you had to like learn it the hard way, but I still agree with your perspective of, hey, just do it. When you do it, you will learn the podcast stuff, everything. Even for me, I felt like I had gotten to this point where I was sort of like overloaded with all this information. And I don't know about you, dude. There's always like one 18-year-old kid out there that's got like 3,000 apartments, and I feel like shit. Like, what the hell am I doing wrong? But if I could end it at the last question, what advice would you give to young Colin, who is maybe someone similar in your shoes that's listening to this on the off chance on social media or on your page or on my page? What's the one bit of advice you would give them before they get started or while they're starting?
I think, like you said, you were a bit overloaded with information, but at the same time, you cannot overload information. You should not underprepare yourself for any part of this. So I think if you think that this is a path you want to go down, do read all those books, and do talk to people, and do get out there and walk around houses. Even you're not going to buy tour houses, tour 10, tour 20, tour 100. Same thing. Do your homework. Run pro formas on all of these houses.
Yeah.
I just made it a goal to run something like 20 pro formas a week on houses that I knew I wasn't going to buy, just so I could get used to like figuring out how to find property tax and calculating vacancy and that kind of stuff. And just, after I ran 100 or 200 or 300 pro formas, I could kind of just tell what the projected cash flow would be by looking at it, knowing the area and stuff. But you don't just get that by like wanting to get that. You have to practice, and you have to actually apply yourself. A lot of people get into this industry because they want it to be, passive. But there's nothing about this industry
100%.
that is passive, at least in the beginning. Maybe when you can step away 20 years from now and have everything managed by property managers and LLCs and stuff. Sure, you get that value. But in the beginning, it's going to add a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of learning. That is not passive. So it's not like you can go to the beach once you buy your first house.
100%. If anything, it's going to be a lot more active management. You definitely cannot take a break for the first 6 months at the very least, because you're like, there's a lot of gaps in the knowledge or in information that was provided that you're sort of picking up and discovering. Like, I had one tenant who was like, oh, I had an agreement with the previous owners on this much they heard security about. So I'm like, this was not communicated to me. So you have to be, I think, overly active to make sure that you're filling in the gaps the gaps that you're discovering as you start to go along. But you'll never get there until you take the plunge and sort of go do it. And you'll never be able to have the confidence to take the plunge if you're not applying that knowledge of like, hey, I listen to these podcasts, I'm looking at these sheets. Let me go ahead and actually start crunching the numbers as if I'm making these offers. Let's see what that sort of breaks down to be. So thank you for that, dude. Thank you for sharing your journey, the ups, the downs, everything. I'm really excited to see how it goes. Hopefully more deals in the future. What's your plan? What's your 12-month, 24-month plan, man?
Yeah,
or what?
Like I mentioned, I'm starting to build out content. So I think that I'm already doing a lot of stuff that people want to hear about.
Okay.
I think this podcast is a test center to that. And hopefully people find value in this podcast. But Lattes and Leverage is going to post a lot to of me.
Nice.
Taking risks and making smart money moves and evaluating, future deals.
Yeah.
So right now I'm rebuilding the coffers, but I'm hoping by fall, interest rates will have dropped a little bit.
Yes.
I can do a cash out refinance.
Nice.
And hopefully, foray that into my next deal.
Let's do it, man. I'm super excited. Thanks again for coming, should I say.
You bet.
Thanks, man.